point in time, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Are we making progress on our?
Close.
Okay. Who provided to me a very thorough biography. His name is Sal Khokar. This is Sal Khokar. He's the principal of Khokar Consulting, a New York-based consulting firm providing services to the retail, merchandising, and fashion sectors. With 20 years of experience in strategy and brand development, he has worked to conceive dynamic solutions to build new brands. His company's multidisciplinary collaborations has provided CEOs for brands like Donna Karan, Adidas, Aditya, that's a good one, I don't know it, Burlington, DoorDash, and Emmanuel Ungaro. With three key growth plans, strategic portfolio optimization, through licensing, and through new market expansion. And the rest of it, I'm just going to highlight his career because it's very clear that this has been a constant job for him, career for him out there. So his early career, starting in 1996, he played a role of shaping both Calvin Klein and Donna Karan in the licensing and international division. And you'll hear that as a theme throughout all of his ventures. In 2001, he formed Forum Consulting, so this is 2015, that's a nice long time, along with a team of industry executives and with expertise in divisional processes, brand development, new product launches, licensing, and international distribution. As principal, he sets the direction for this firm. So some of the countries he's been in his expansion, international expansion activities are Scandinavian countries, Germany, Turkey, Russia, Hong Kong, and India. In 2001, he took the role as interim director of Watney. It's an accessory licensee to Ralph Lauren, and leading the restructuring of portfolio divisions with the company owners. Once again, Brazil, France, and other countries outside the United States, including Japan and Australia. Again, that's a lot of frequent flyer miles. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay. Recently, Khokar was appointed as head of global licensing for Adidas Sports Style Division, inclusive of Y3, Stella McCartney, and Porsche Design, where licensing agreements exceeded $200 million in net sales over 5 years. That came to the company through its direct involvement. Once again, we're outside of the United States. We're in Japan, China, and Russia, and India, and Brazil, and Mexico. So, as you can see, this is somebody who has a very, very profound impact on fashion, on the fashion industry, internationally, growing those brands for some big companies. He has been a noted industry speaker at the Institute of Fashion in Tokyo, Institute of Marangoni in Milan, ISD Hyderabad, NYU Stern School of Business, MIT Sloan School, Harvard Business School, Cornell, INSEAD in France, and FIT in New York. That's Fashion Institute of Technology.
Yes, not the Florida one.
He's been invited as an industry leader to speak at multiple conferences and to visit and advise designers and executives in Russia, Sao Paulo, Lakme, India, Stockholm, Berlin, and Hong Kong. So let's put our hands together. Computer.
If I knew you were going to read the whole thing, I definitely would have sent you an abbreviated version.
I highlighted it and abbreviated it. So I wanted to send the message about who you are and where you've been.
Wonderful.
Okay.
And graduate school at FAU.
And the graduate school at FAU. Most important.
Yeah, minor little detail.
Speaking to executive MBAs and our flex MBAs who typically are also working full-time, come to class in the evening. So.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm sure we'll get to the presentation at some point. It's very nice to be back here. The school looks nothing like it did when I was studying history here. What we'll do today is the presentation is really brief, but I wanted to go through what some of the biggest challenges the retail, fashion, consumer sector, which includes luxury, is facing. As we look at some of the challenges, we can talk about brands that are doing it right, and we can talk about brands that are success stories, as opposed to brands in the news that are hitting great earnings, but not necessarily great revenues, or hitting great revenues, but not necessarily earnings. The different valuation structures in other industries compared to the retail and fashion industries. What I will do is, I was going to talk about my experience later, but I'll start with that since this is going to eventually be ready. I started out, I moved to New York a very long time ago, and my first job essentially was at Calvin Klein, which helped me move within the ranks. Started at Calvin, moved up to Donna Karan, ground up. Sales, merchandising, planning, international sales, move over to Donna Karan, convinced the CEO over there that he needed an international division, which they did not have at the time. No one was looking at international in the early 2000 periods beyond Europe and Japan. When you started talking about BRIC markets, it was still a discussion very much about emerging markets, whereas today we look at these markets as some of the strongest economic markets out there, with showing the largest growth potential. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, Middle East, Turkey are today what we consider some of the best markets for retail. Russia and Brazil keep having their issues every other year, but eventually they'll bounce back if the government gets its act together in both those countries. So when I joined Donna Karan, it was a great opportunity because this was a publicly traded company which had just been taken back and was struggling. New CEO comes over from Ralph Lauren. The brand needs to be repositioned. The brand needs to grow. I come over from Calvin Klein. New management comes over from Calvin Klein. And the goal was, how do we take a well-recognized brand and make the most of it? How can we take an apparel brand and turn it into a true lifestyle consumer goods brand? So the division that I created was licensing and international. So every few months, what we were doing was, let's see how the brand will translate into eyewear, into watches, into fragrances, into lingerie, into hosiery, into bedding, into paint, and so on. What this entailed essentially was launching a new business almost every 3 months. Writing a business plan, working with the design team, developing the product, and evaluating, do we want to do this in-house, or do we want to license it out to an expert that can manufacture it and distribute it? That's primarily how the expansion of this brand came about. When we joined, me along with 3 or 4 other managers from Calvin, the company was doing around $400 million in top-line sales. 4 years later, when we sold the company to LVMH, the brand was doing $1.2 billion. And of that $800 million growth, $600 million of that came from licensing and international expansion. And therein lies the ability of a company to create value out of its name without the direct cash investment into new products. Licensing and international proved that the brand had enough of a recognition that multiple strategic partners were willing to invest the money to create a different product, to find a different distribution in a different country, and based on the entire risk, that the brand is well known. And that's what we did. We signed eyewear with Marchand, watches with Fossil, fragrances with Estee Lauder, shoes with Schwartz and Benjamin, so on, so on. So all of those companies were billion-dollar companies in their own right because they were experts in footwear manufacturing and distribution, eyewear manufacturing and distribution. So this is when multiple private equity firms started to look at this, so did LVMH. LVMH at the time only owned one major brand in the United States, and that was Marc Jacobs. And they wanted an entry into the mid-tier contemporary designer space in the United States, where distribution wasn't in like 50 or 100 stores, but it was in 500 stores. Donna Karan was that vehicle. They bought the company. They paid an enormous amount for it, which 15 years later they still haven't recovered, because what they paid for was the top line. They paid for a $1.2 billion company. Ernst & Young, which is my inspiration for going into consulting, because they were so completely clueless about our industry, spent 8 months doing due diligence on a company and telling LVMH it's perfectly fine to pay 12x on a company that's maybe has, actually we didn't have any earnings at the time. We're at 1.2 billion, there were no earnings. Everything was just being paid out in bonuses, in royalty fees, in manufacturing and advertising. So the goal was we can show the market that top line growth was so important, so crucial, that we could get whatever valuation we wanted. LVMH paid $500 million for the company, $200 million just for the trademark. Donna had the DKNY and the Donna Karan name in a separate entity. She was able to sell 100% of the company for $500 million and then asked $200 million for herself personally to sell the names. The beauty of this deal, and I didn't mean to spend so much time on it, but we'll get into a broader discussion. But the beauty of that deal was she was able to just put a very simple clause in the contract saying, I will remain creative director for as long as I wish, and I will retain the right to hire and fire or have final say-so on the CEO. So essentially, she got her shares out of the $500 million, she got $200 million cash, and nothing in her life changed except she had no responsibility whatsoever, and she got to do her job for as long as she wanted without the responsibility, with a higher paycheck than she was paying herself when she worked for herself. So it's phenomenal. It was truly phenomenal. The challenge there was that LVMH, in their own strategy, changed midway through. Their decision to go into a contemporary market, and I can't really say that if that really ever was a strategy for them, but by the time they bought the company, they wanted the reverse. They wanted Donna Karan to be less like Calvin, more like Armani. How can we take an American consumer goods brand and turn it to look and feel like a European luxury brand? A task that is near impossible. It's difficult to convince millions of consumers that a brand that they've been paying $75 for a sneaker at Athlete's Foot is now all of a sudden charging $700 to $800 for a dress, where that same dress at Bloomingdale's was around $450 or $350 maybe 6 months ago for the last 15 years. This is changing perception, changing positioning is a very, very difficult task. Tommy Hilfiger tries it every 10 years and fails every 10 years. And it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. All the ads in the world, all the beautiful stores in the world, you almost need a generational gap for your customer to forget their connection to the brand and for a new generation to see the brand for the first time in the positioning that you want them to see it. The store, if any of us remember what Tommy Hilfiger looked like when it was launched, It is impossible to bring ourselves to go pay, $1,000 for a suit by Tommy. Does not matter what the fabric is, and does not matter where it's manufactured. It is a big leap to take. And this was a challenge that LVMH faced with Donna Karan, and even though the Donna Karan brand was nowhere near as moderate or contemporary price point as Tommy Hilfiger. Let's take a look at this. What's the easiest way for me to...
That's a pointer for the PowerPoint.
Voila, okay. So there's just like some fun stuff in here. And what I wanted to highlight was, challenges faced by CEOs today. And we can think through this from the standpoint of, how has the CEO role changed? What is the importance of a CEO role? What are the challenges that they're facing? And at the end of the day, let's not worry about the billion-plus-dollar companies. We all have a few days before we become CEO of those companies. But let's think through, and if there's anyone here that's the CEO of a billion-dollar company, raise your hand. Okay, all right, we're safe. Let's think about the CEO role as either a small mid-cap company or a startup. Now, the challenge there is the CEO has multiple hats. Setting up the organization, recognizing what their strengths are, and recognizing what their strengths aren't. That's almost more important because you're an operator, you can be the visionary, but you cannot be the CMO if that's not your strength. You definitely cannot be the CTO if that's not your strength. And if you are the CTO, you're not the COO. So you need an operator. So figuring out if you are the entrepreneur that you're creating this entity and you're at this company at a senior level, recognizing your management and seeing whose strengths are what and where's the gaping hole of talent and filling that as quickly as possible becomes one of the first and single most important challenges that an entrepreneur or a company faces when they're building their management team. A CEO is not supposed to be the answer to everything. He's supposed to have the answer for everything, but that does not mean he has to execute on every single vertical, which is marketing, product development, operations, production, PR, social media, consumer relations, investor relations. Just a few things so as their conversations, a big part of my job is restructuring turnaround, growth strategy, working with CEOs to figure out, more than likely, I'm getting a phone call from one or two people. It's either the investors in a company who are basically giving me a call saying, Sal, can you please take a look? Now, my first question is, I'll take a look, but is it, what is the challenge? Are you happy with the CEO, but you're not getting the growth at the speed that you would like? Or you want to kill the CEO and restructure the company? Depending on that answer is how I'm going to go in and sort out the strategy for the company. If they're like, okay, we love the CEO, but he's not getting anything done. Now I'm his best friend. I go in, and the idea here is, how do we evaluate your challenges? How do you evaluate how busy you are and what your focus is? 90% of the time, the challenge of management is that they're too busy saving the day. They're too busy worrying about the operations of the day-to-day to worry about how am I going to grow my business. They're worrying about hitting last year numbers, last quarter numbers, hitting this quarter's numbers. They're worried about generating sales, managing staff, handling operational margin, and what ends up being a long-term strategy keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed. So thinking about licensing, category extensions, consumer relations, new business development in international markets, franchising, retail partnerships, collaborations, all of those things just become words and meetings that never get executed on. It's not that they don't know how, it's that they don't prioritize it simply because they do not have the time, because almost always there's a certain fire that's bigger than this nice little cozy place of growing the business. So the culture of organization, source of organizational judgment is no longer one desk where the buck stops. A lot of these things, they become very relevant when we're reading in the news about the corporate culture at Amazon compared to the corporate culture at Netflix. How many have been hearing about this? All right, I'd love to hear thoughts on it. What was really interesting was how there's a consistent underlining tone of that this is the new norm. Like, it's fine to be shocked towards the lack of inhumanity. However, somewhat this is the norm in the most places that are generating the kind of growth at the kind of speed Amazon has been creating. So today, it's the thought process for startups, the thought process of a private equity firm or a venture capital investing in a new entity is, how passionate is this entrepreneur? Are they passionate about their product? Are they passionate about what they do? Consciousness of the greater good and a connection to the consumer. What's their global vision? Now those few things, when you think about them, they're not really talking about how disruptive is this to the market, how unique is the product, how we'll own a market share. What this is those things are assumed. The competitive landscape today is so intense for startups that it's just, if you get in the door, it's already assumed that your product's brilliant. It's already assumed that you're disruptive to the market. It's already assumed that you are going to kill it. Now it becomes, why am I investing in you as opposed to taking your brilliant idea and just ripping it off or finding a better management team to do it? So that is the biggest hurdle. It's not like, oh, is my idea good enough? If you got in the door, your idea probably is good enough. Now it's a matter of, are you the right person to execute it? Or have you put together the right management team to execute it? And some of the things that everyone looks at is these few things. Consciousness of the greater good. What the hell is that? What that is that the Tom's business model is no longer a novelty. It's almost expected that if you want a long-term relationship with your consumer, that you have some component of consciousness of the greater good. If it's, I haven't heard anything about Nike and sweatshops since the story about Nike and sweatshops. H&M and Zara seem to be immune to their manufacturing conduct, but when you get to a certain stage, you grow based upon numbers. But if you are not at that stage, and if you're trying to get there, we can't be looking to emulate business models from 10 years ago. That means we're 20 years too late. You have to be looking at a business model that will be relevant 10 years from now. Because 5 years from now, if you launch it today, hopefully 5 to 6 years from now, you want to exit with that 10x valuation. And the only way you'll exit with that 10x valuation is because some fat cat private equity firm is going to be like, I can really take this and milk it around the world and grow it 10x. So I'm willing to pay for it. So it has to have legs that can go that far. If it doesn't, then why is anyone going to invest in you a second time, let alone pay 10 times the value of the company the second time? So these three things, selectively forget the past, manage the present, and create the future. And selectively forget the past is, anyone here a retail, fashion, anyone has a direct interest in this by any chance? All right, okay, a few people. So I'm going to use certain companies that are very specific to the industry, and I'll give you some context on them. But so this guy, a few years ago, LVMH replaced the creative director of Yves Saint Laurent, and this gentleman named Hedi Slimane came on board as creative director, and one of the first things that he did was he changed the name. He changed the name Yves Saint Laurent to Saint Laurent. He wanted to make sure that he put his stamp on this house. He wanted to make sure that from day one, everyone in the world, in the fashion world, knew that this was not the house of Yves from 50 years ago. This was now going to be led by, driven by his vision for the brand. Now, mixed feelings about this, but and the CEO usually the CEO of certain fashion houses are more COOs, and you've got the creative director leading the vision for the brand. In this case, it's very much the case. So one of the first things of selectively forgetting the past, that's a very fine line of how do I grow my business, how do I create a meaningful brand to connect with today's consumer without alienating a much larger demographic of consumers that's been loyal to me for the last 20 plus years. And they may still be loyal to me for another 20. But because I have a 50-year vision, I need to get the 20-year-olds today to think that I'm the coolest thing. So here's where that very high-risk decision comes in, that I'm going to forego my bread and butter. I'm going to forego the woman that's been paying $3,000 to $4,000 for my handbag, for my dress, $5,000 to $8,000 for my handbag, $1,000 for my shoes for the last 20 years, and I'm going to change the name, change the font, change the look of the stores, make the ad campaigns targeted towards a younger audience, hire a designer that they can't relate to, create a collection that they can't fit into, and let's see what happens. So rationally, that I don't know of too many other industries which would think that way and act that way. But the strength of this decision is based upon, again, the long-term vision of the parent company. Everyone here, that's not in, it has no interest whatsoever in fashion, still knows who the brand Yves Saint Laurent. They would still know Chanel. They would still know Dior. You would probably know Van Cleef & Arpels. And the majority of these companies are all owned by LVMH. And if you pick up a Vogue from 20 years ago, or you pick one up from last week, the first 10 to 15 pages will inevitably have at least 5 or 6 full cover ads by brands that are owned by LVMH. Reason being, it's not because you don't know their name. It's not like they need to advertise. It's because they don't care about you. They care about your brothers, your sisters, your kids. They care about everyone. And they want everyone to aspire to these brands. So the consumers that can afford them continue to purchase them, and those that can't continue to aspire towards them to raise their value, and when they can, they're already built-in customers. So it's thinking from the standpoint of, it's not whether you're my customer or not, it's when will you be my customer. It's just a given that you will at some point want to buy my product. And that's the conviction with which they build brands. So there's no interest in, what's my earnings this year? Who cares? 5 of my brands are making so much money that I don't care about the other 3, so I can put in place a long-term strategy. So this is an extreme version that can only be executed by a company that has a long-term vision and enough of a portfolio to make up for the ones that are not killing it in the portfolio. This part I'll kind of just zoom over, where these are 3 brands. What's interesting today is that, every football player thinks that they're a brand, and every reality TV star thinks that they're a brand. These are each 200 years old. So, and when you look at it, they all started with a very clear customer demographic. Monarchs, royal courts, aristocrats. And then they were like, okay, we'll go after the poor people who just went to America with some money. And that was like early 1800s, mid 1800s. And after 150 years of making money and building their brand, they were like, oh, the whole world kind of does, has heard of us. Maybe now we should expand a little bit and make something under $1,000, which was the 60s, which is the first time worldwide where you see a single household with a working family. So where you see women starting to work in a large enough number that the household income is doubling. When that happens, you just have spending. And to make use of that consumer spending, that consumer confidence at the time, a lot of the brands that were already established, already had their distribution, basically decided that we can go after it. How do we go after this demographic? How do we go after this knowledge base? You keep moving forward. 80s is new financially powered demographic in the 80s, middle class target, disposable income, and credit card debt. So what that essentially means is that the 90s is pretty much the reason why retail is at its all-time low today, in my opinion. Probably the worst shopping experience in the history of shopping is today. Which is why so many people are so comfortable shopping online. What basically happened in the 90s is there was consumer spending, there was consumer confidence. So what happened is, if you look at the pyramid, and luxury is up here, designer is below, contemporary is below that, moderate is below that, and mass is below that, which basically means Walmart, Kohl's, Mervyn's, JCPenney's, Macy's, Lord & Taylor. Right above that is Bloomingdale's, Saks, and above that is Neiman Marcus and specialty stores. So when you break it down in that manner, individuals who should have been shopping at Bloomingdale's, all of a sudden, because husband and wife are making 6-figure salaries, and they're killing it with their bonuses, and they have insane amounts of available credit, now start going out and thinking that we can actually buy a Louis Vuitton or Chanel purse. Now, $150,000 to $500,000 household income is not the demographic for a premium luxury brand. But they became that. They became that in the 90s, and all that did is, when paychecks essentially curbed themselves, when you have the last 5 or 6 years, you have the economic downturn, there are no more bonuses, one family member is no longer working, or a family member has kids, and so on. So what that leads to is a reality check on, no, I really should not be buying a $5,000 handbag. I'm more than fine buying a $800 handbag. What that leads to is, now you're going into Bloomingdale's or you're going to Macy's, but what's happened is it's too late. You're trained. You are the most educated generation on fashion. You know the celebrities that are wearing it. You not only want to go into the store, be offered champagne and a nice package and a beautiful bag as you walk out, you want that exact same experience, the exact same design, the exact same cachet about the celebrity wearing it, you just want it at 75% off. And that's where we are today, a culture of sale. So if you go into a store, a designer is still pretending that they're a designer because they're selling a dress at $750, but most of the people out there have never paid $750 for a dress because they're smart enough to wait 60 days, go 30 off, wait another 60 days, it's about 50 off, go to last call at Neiman's, it's about 80% off. So, and then you've got Guild Group, and that's where Guild killed it. Guild came about, how many people know about Guild Group? All right. What about Moda Operandi? All right, great. So Moda Operandi is an interesting, it's like the next generation of Guild Group. Guild Group came about at a perfect time where all of these brands had excess inventory. 9/11 happened. Several stores basically just shopping went to hell. The stores did not cancel orders. Multiple brands worldwide are now holding on to 60-70% of the inventory for a season and for another season. So they have no way and they had no plan on how to get rid of it. A website comes around and says, guess what? We'll take it. They take it at 80 off. They take it at 80 cents on the dollar and creates a site and makes it available to the consumer saying designer goods now available at 75% off. And that was the success of Guild Group, which basically got them right place, right time, and the growth of it. We'll go through 20 years in like 2 minutes here. So Donna Karan, essentially between 1990 and 2010, those are 5 big brands to look at, and all they were doing essentially during those 5 years was going into lifestyle categories, going into licensing. They basically recognized that we're great brands, now we just need to figure out how do we grow. The CEO's entire job was licensing, international markets, retail stores, joint ventures. Right after that, so they do this successfully. As they do that successfully, each one of them has their exit. Donna is acquired by LVMH, Calvin's acquired by PVH Group, Tommy's acquired by Apex private equity firm, Valentino's acquired by Primera private equity firm. Armani doesn't sell, but he goes into hotels and malls. Marc Jacobs does a collaboration with Louis Vuitton. So what this basically shows is they spend 10 years or so building their brands. They spend the second 10 years growing the brand into category extensions, at which point they're now busting at the seams with volume. I still remember at Calvin Klein, I still remember Calvin Klein freaking out when he realized that his underwear was at a pharmacy in Stockholm. And he comes back and he's like, what have I done? And this was when he sued Warnaco, which was the licensing company that owned the underwear distribution. And this is it's an iconic suit where the brand was suing its licensing partner for really generating 80% of the brand's volume. But he did not want the distribution that he had. It took a long time. Suit happened. He gets the name back, sells it to PVH. PVH has since been trying to reposition it. That positioning nightmare of Calvin Klein till the early 2000s is something that the brand has been paying for the last 15 years, till today. Like, when was the last time anyone even thought of going to buy a Calvin Klein pair of jeans? And Calvin Klein jeans, when I was there, it was a $4 billion company, and jeans alone, kids did 100 million, women's jeans did 500 million, men's jeans did 200 million, and juniors did another 500 million. It was like the brand could do no wrong. And because it grew so fast, because it ended up being in every possible distribution possible, They didn't even get the exit out of it because the brand had lost its value. It took a while to fix it. They got rid of it, so on. So first 10 years, build a brand. Next 10 years, grow the category extensions, grow into international and licensing. So, by the way, this is what I'm talking about as a negative is exactly what I do. So what I did for Calvin was grow the brand internationally. What I did for Donna was sign the licensing deals, grow the brand internationally, sold the company to LVMH, started my own firm, and now what I do for pretty much every other client out there is figure out, okay, you want to go into eyewear, watches, fragrances? Let's do this. You want to go into Brazil, Russia, India, China? Let's do it. The challenge now is how many of them are willing to learn from the case studies which were destructive for brands and take it one step at a time and only go into the categories that are natural categories for your brand as opposed to anything that anyone offers up. Only go into the markets that will both be sound financial investments, but there is a real demographic over there. There is some name recognition over there. As opposed to, you know, I have a house in Turks and Caicos, maybe I should open a store there. And that is coming from an actual creative director of a $2 billion company. So while these guys are too busy selling to private equity firms, and oh, I didn't mention the strategy. So what do these private equity firms do after they buy them? They basically want to take the brands back 20 years. They're like, oh, I wish Donna Karan was all nice and beautiful and expensive the way it was 25 years ago. Same thing with Calvin, same thing with Tommy. Valentino, when that was bought, they hired these two young designers to reposition it. They didn't hire them, they actually bought the company. While that's happening, you have the advent of the next 10 years, which is fast fashion. They're like, okay, it's almost always easier to find a niche and own it faster when you're a startup, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel from within. You know, why didn't Blockbuster come up with Netflix? Why didn't, you know, why did MySpace fail? Why wasn't MySpace Facebook? Companies end up getting wrapped in their own success, and they cannot see the newer opportunities. One of the smartest things that Facebook does is they see anything pop up that's remotely interesting, they just buy it. It doesn't even matter how much it costs, let's just buy it. God forbid it could be a competitor. So that's one of the smartest things. Nordstrom's bought a company called Hotlook for an insane amount of money, simply because they needed access to an online platform for all the brands that they had. Here is where basically Target was a repositioning, but Zara and H&M were the reincarnation of Gap and Banana Republic. It was what Gap and Banana Republic should have been, but they were too busy selling flat front khakis for 25 years to recognize that their customer had actually evolved. So you've got, for the first time, H&M is basically saying, doesn't matter your income bracket, everyone wants to be fashionable. And we are capable of accomplishing that. And well, they accomplish it by ripping everything off style.com, but the idea here is they look at high fashion, they tone it down, they develop it, and there's two success stories with H&M. One is their ability to deliver at a speed that no one else can, which allows them to tell the consumer, don't wait for a sale because it won't be here next week. So they have created a sense of urgency. It's here, buy it, don't buy it, but it won't be here the week after. That's fast fashion at its best. The second is it's actually fashion. It's actually product that is being created by the best designers in the world, toned down to an understandable level where a much broader audience can consume it. What's interesting about it is that they understood aspiration. It wasn't about I'm selling a $9.99 bikini top. Yes, that is what I'm selling, but I am still going to pay Giselle $300,000 for an ad to wear the bathing suit. So that's where they maintained the aspirational component of the product that they were selling. And their whole idea was it doesn't matter how rich you are or how much money you have, you still want this bathing suit top. And that's a true success story, and that's where they got everyone. They didn't just get the income demographic that they were going after, they got luxury consumers. They got everybody. Because when somebody just needs a t-shirt, they just walk in. And it doesn't matter, they don't need to go into Neiman Marcus and pay $35 or to $75 for a t-shirt. They can just pay $9.99 for a t-shirt. And it's not because that didn't exist in the past. $9.99 t-shirts always existed. The difference now is H&M's cool. So I don't mind spending $9.99 for my t-shirt. Whereas before that, I'd never spent less than $45 for my t-shirt. It's not me. That's my luxury consumer speaking. So this was the quote that, it's like this was brought up repeatedly on, is this fast fashion a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How does it translate? I disagree. So the three things in the future: online, brick markets, cross-collaboration. These are just some brands. So those are the three things that we're talking about with companies today, that what's relevant. Independent of your core business, how are we going to grow? How are we going to connect with a broader audience? Nothing here is revolutionary. So between these three, online, brick markets, cross-collaboration, this has been the same mantra for the last 10 years. It's just who's going to do it faster, who's going to do it better, who's going to do it with the best partner, who's going to do it with the appropriate funding. These are brands that have done it exceptionally well. So collaborations is Brooks Brothers, about 8 years ago did it with Tom Brown. More recently, they did the collaboration with Great Gatsby. Theory hired a young designer, well, not that young, but like an amazing designer from Europe to update the brand. Celine, where Stella McCartney was creative director. Well, Phoebe Philo was creative director, then Stella McCartney comes, she leaves, and they hire Phoebe Philo back, and is right now the #1 handbag for the last 4 years in a row. And the collection has done amazingly well. It's the #1 performing brand in the LVMH group. Burberry, probably right now the only brand in the fashion world where the creative director has the CEO role. It went through 2 turnarounds. The former CEO of Saks Fifth Avenue turned it around the first time, Rosemary Bravo. Probably the most amazing success story of, again, it's $3 billion plus. They are the #1 brand on social media until Tory Burch came along, where the difference being Burberry was driving incredible content. Burberry was driving incredible content, and they were generating interest in that manner. Tory Burch came along. She had content. The main difference was the brand was allowing engagement. So you can put your stuff out there. Burberry was playing it safe, and they said, we've got tremendous content, follow us. Tory Burch comes, I have tremendous content, what do you think? And now when you engage the consumer, you run the risk of positive with the negative. This was what luxury brands, even most of them even today, are not willing to do. They're willing to share, but they're not willing to let you comment. Tory was one of the first to let it comment, and has been, as of last year, one of the top brands on social media for engagement. This is just a question that keeps coming up on the importance of magazines compared to online. That the majority of purchases that we're making right now, the first place where we see, what's becoming interesting is, the quote before this was about product. I still believe that it is product first. But the challenge today is that we need to sell the consumer on the product long before they ever see the product. So by the time you go online to purchase it, or you go in a store to purchase it, something should have triggered, why are you looking for that brand? Otherwise, you're just looking for a pair of jeans. How do I get you to buy my pair of jeans as opposed to any pair of jeans? And that's where marketing comes in. So the component of the business where product first hasn't changed. It's just the bar's been raised in the sense that there's a much more even playing field today. You no longer need to spend millions to make an impact with your consumer. I don't need to own a store on Madison Avenue or in the Town Center Mall. I don't need to have a billboard ad. I don't need to have an ad in Vogue to compete with the luxury brands that are out there. All I need is an incredible campaign and an intelligent way to make it go viral, or at least for it to reach my consumer demographic. And I can do that online. And I can do it with a great blog. I can do it through social media. I can do it through brand ambassadors. I can do it through celebrity collaborations. I can do it through stylist help. There are multiple vehicles. The challenge with that is there's now 100 times more companies than there ever were trying to do this. So it comes right back to who's the most talented and who executed it best. So that's good for us because immediately only the best stuff stands out. And when the best stuff stands out, you can only hope and pray their product is equally good. This is a lot more common now, brick markets. I'll talk about the celebrity collaborations a little bit more, but brick markets, what's more important.
Can you tell them what the letters BRIC mean? Because I'm not sure everyone here knows that.
Does everyone here know that? Come on, guys. Yes, we do. Brazil, Russia, India, China. Add to that Middle East and Turkey. At least we look at probably today, if I'm working with a brand and we're like, okay, let's open some stores, I'm looking at Sao Paulo, Mexico City, and Mumbai as the 3 most important cities in the world to open retail. It is basically what we're talking about is 3 of the largest cities in the world. Each city at a higher percentage of economic growth than their competitors in any developing market. A 1% of luxury households that make up a larger 1% than any other city in the world. So now, if I have $5 million to spend to open a store, why am I going to open it in Miami? Why am I going to open it in New York City, where I'm completely limited? Well, okay, I'll open it in New York City. It's some of the other places where I really have to challenge the economic impact of my $5 million to open this store. So when you open that store in that market, what you're basically doing is you have the opportunity to reach that audience. You have the opportunity to distribute into secondary markets in that audience, and you have the opportunity to sign joint venture franchises in those audiences. So Russia is on hold. China would be on top of this list if we did not factor in ease of entry and ease of doing business. So by saying India and Brazil, I'm saying that based upon the volume we can generate as well as the ease of doing business in those markets. And we can put Mexico City in there as well, because just as relevant, because Mexico City means Central America. I can open, for a luxury brand, 5, 6 stores in Mexico, which will barely be scratching the surface of how many more I can grow there. Whereas if I go into Russia, I'm opening 2 stores max. So the next 2 markets are Turkey and Middle East. And I can't look at Middle East as Dubai. If I look at it as Dubai, I can open 2 stores and that's about it. And I could reach all the people that I need to reach in the 1 store. But if you look at it as Qatar, Doha, Abu Dhabi, now all of a sudden we're back to 7 stores. So any market where I can open 7 stores with 1 partner is a very robust market. But I want to make sure that that market can afford the price point, has the social media access to the United States. That way I do not have to duplicate all my PR and my celebrity efforts to get the aspirational component generated in that country. I can still use the US for all of that. We're still 10 years ahead of the game. And by we, I mean the United States and Europe are still the creative leaders in product development at the high-end space because of their corporate understanding of the full life cycle of the brand. From product packaging, from product design, to marketing, social media, PR, collaboration, to retail concepts, and final connection with the consumers. There are different countries out there that are ahead in certain capacities, but definitely not in all. So you've got India that's brilliant at embroidery, or you've got China that's great at sportswear. They can manufacture great sportswear, but I still don't see a consumer good brands coming out of China that's competing with a American Apparel. But Zara came out of Spain. Uniqlo has killed it. They're opening stores at the speed of H&M. Yeah. So I'll end with this. What does a brand mean? And we did this study at Harvard, and the idea was without looking for the name, how can a logo or an image bring about a true feeling or a sensation or a thought or an aspiration or a purpose within you immediately? That essentially is the success of a brand. That why is it that if we're wearing a white knit shirt and all of a sudden, we are Preppy Central, but the same exact shirt with a swoosh on it makes us want to go running. Same exact shirt. Here is the same thing. This is a post-World War II brand developed by an iconic designer, which today is consistently referenced in hip-hop. It's graduated into jewelry. It's graduated into a lifestyle well beyond what the brand owners had ever imagined. So sometimes it doesn't matter what the brand's vision is. It's the consumer's love for it and the consumer's decision on how they want to use it. This is the funny thing about this story is, again, another and it ties into the movie aspect, that that Lamborghini, when the study was done from men 35 and older that were considered to fall under the Ferrari Lamborghini purchase category. And essentially, the question was, when did you decide that you wanted a Ferrari? And when did you decide that you wanted a Lamborghini? And before I give you that answer, and the consistency of these answers. But to give you an idea, the answers are directly linked to 2 movies. Lamborghini Countach was the #1, the highest selling Lamborghini in Lamborghini's history if you don't look at the cost of Lamborghini going up. That movie, the movie that had it was Cannonball Run. Immediately, a few years after that, and Lamborghini has its run, and it's the only period in Lamborghini's history where their sales led Ferrari. Ferris Bueller's Day Off comes out, and you have the California Spider. Ever since then, till today, Ferrari sales beat Lamborghini. Now, in that case study, everyone that was a Ferrari person, somewhere in that interview, mentioned Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So, it's interesting, the power of product placement. And there's product placement, and then there's like brilliant product placement. Someone brought up Steven Spielberg. These are old movies, but they're interesting because the products are still today. So one of the best product placements ever was Reese's Pieces in E.T. I was actually working on the restructuring of General Motors when Jeep, when the Lara Croft wanted several Jeeps for the movie. What we did was, we're like, you don't have to pay for them. We want Jeep. We literally spoke to the directors, and we wanted Jeep written into the movie as a character. We're like, this is going to be her personality. She's going to be driving a Jeep for every Lara Croft movie you ever make. The Jeep's going to parachute down from the plane, and that's the only way she's going to get out. He wrote it into the story. Jeep sales went through the roof. And it was the rebranding, rebirth of the brand. Nike I just love, Apple. I hope this was interesting. Share with me any questions you guys might have, and happy to go with it.
What do you think is your opinion? Does the consumer drive the brand more, or does the brand drive the consumer?
I think if you're a good brand, you're definitely driving the consumer. I think there's a reason brands call certain people influencers, tastemakers, whatever the term, brand ambassadors. Those are that tiny, tiny percentage of consumers that influence the rest of the demographic. But to get them, they have to fall in love with the brand in a genuine way. And if they don't, then we just pay them.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure.
About the BRICS, it can be an opportunity, but it can be a risk also, because like Brazil is facing a big problem now, and for the next 2 or 3 years, I think it will be very difficult there. Also Russia, and if you have more than 50% of your revenue from there, it's not also a risk for medium long term.
So a question about the risks in BRIC markets. 100%. That's why I think every time I was talking about Russia and Brazil having economic issues. The challenge is, we're not talking about General Motors. We're talking about a small fashion company wanting to get into that market. This is a real long-term play. My little store in Sao Paulo or in Rio or Florianopolis or in Fortaleza is not going to live or die by the economic downturn in Brazil. But what it will do is it can take advantage of the downturn in Brazil, get lower price real estate, get a joint venture partner that isn't as greedy as they were 2 years ago, and in that downturn, build consumer recognition, build consumer loyalty. So by the time it's, again, having a long-term point of view that Brazil is important. So to answer your question, that belief has to exist. Brazil is important. It's not doing good today. That doesn't mean I don't need to be there. Everyone said that about India. Now they pay 10 times the price what you could have paid 5 years ago. Thoughts? Yeah.
Yes, with the actual social media engagement that is, Do you think these big brands in the future will have to adopt that type of business more seriously?
Adapt to social media?
Yeah, because at the moment, people that do a lot of search and feedback in the internet are not seeing big brands as they are more expensive. So I think big brands are going to lose a big share of purchasing power.
Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, it's how are big brands going to evolve utilizing social media? So personally, I think everyone is on social media overdose. It's literally, there is a lack of, very few companies are generating original content specifically developed for social media. What's happening is content is being developed out there. Ad campaigns are shot, fashion videos are shot, lookbooks are shot, street style is shot. All of these things are shot. But it's content, and it's not strategically connecting to, is this the right dialogue to be had on Pinterest, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Google+, it still exists, I believe, and will it speak to my demographic? So it's just kind of being, like some 22-year-old right out of school is basically made head of social media. And because you use Facebook, all of a sudden you're an expert. It's still, within the brand, there needs to be an evolution at the highest level, which basically means old people need to get fired, related to social media and marketing. And they need to start utilizing, they just need to start building a marketing strategy that is specific to social media, because it is the single most important vehicle through which consumers are finding out about the brand. So getting your voice right on social media and getting your image right on social media is one of the single biggest challenges brands are facing today. And which is why brands like Chanel have taken so long to get out there. It's not because they're behind the times, it's because they're aware of what they're good at, and they're aware of what they're not good at. And if we're not good at it, it's better not to do it. I'll do it when I am perfect at it. And that's the difference between leadership and basically, throwing darts on a wall and hoping something sticks.
But going off of that note, wouldn't, you said the brands, the long-term brands, the very prestigious luxury brands, not interacting with social media, wouldn't that also, in a sense, impact them positively? Because, in a sense, if, let's say they're not on social media, but yet they still have people getting Louis Vuitton, getting, Gucci, getting those type of brands, and they see that means a higher level of life, a higher level of living, then they would still try to buy it. Like you say, how people try to aspirize towards it.
I'm not sure. I think at this point, no one can ignore the importance of being on social media. It's what that presence looks like. To answer your question, I don't think a CEO today could get away with saying my brand's too important to be on social media. I just don't think that's a realistic strategy. And there are CEOs out there saying that. Actually, they're not saying that. They're just saying I'm not ready. That might be a legitimate enough reason. It's the only legitimate reason. I don't look at social media as some anomaly. I just look at it as yet another media platform that a CMO needs to plan for. And because it's not taken that seriously is why so many old school CMOs have not evolved to it. It's like, I'm going to buy billboards, I'm going to buy magazine ads, I'm going to buy phone booths, I'm going to do these events, I'm going to do this. It's the same as how much money am I going to spend on on my Facebook presence? How much money am I going to spend on my staffing on Pinterest? How much collateral? It's still a media buy. The difference is I have to create original content that is Pinterest or Instagram driven. You know, the videos on, I forget, I think it's Instagram where they're only 10 seconds long or something like that.
Fine.
What, Vine?
Fine.
Okay. So I don't use this stuff. I just so it's that content can't be a 2-minute long video done for Nowness or a high fashion online publication and just edited down to 10 seconds and thrown on a Vine. No one will look at it. You know, one of the best examples I can give you is Karl Lagerfeld spent obscene amount of money on a Chanel ad with Nicole Kidman inspired by Moulin Rouge. And a few 100,000 people saw this beautiful short movie on YouTube. Around the same time, Pepsi spent about the same amount of money, but what they spent it on was on ideas from local, I believe it was local entrepreneurs coming up with ideas for the Pepsi Challenge, and they gave away anywhere between 5,000, 15,000, 50,000, and this brought in over 10 million viewers. So it's about the exact same amount of money and the usage of it. So it was, hey, one person hired Grey Global and the other one did it himself. So it's really thinking through your strategy and justifying the value of exclusivity to the value of reaching everyone. And I think when you are an established brand, you have less of a risk. So I would almost argue the opposite, that because you're such a big brand, you have less to lose, that everybody knows you. How much time do we have?
Actually, I'm going to take one or two more questions.
Okay.
You've spoken about their established brands already, but for a new brand in the fashion industry that wants to enter it, what do you think are the necessary, like just a few necessary marketing strategies that they have to take to be successful?
For a new brand?
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, research is the single most important thing. You just have to make sure that you're not creating your product in a bubble. You have to, whatever your idea is, doesn't matter how original you think it might seem, there's at least 20 people exactly at that moment thinking, doing, executing exactly that idea. The issue is, can you do it better and faster? It's first to market. So one, find out worldwide who's your competition. Who's your competition in real life and who's your competition in the future. Once you know that, you can tweak your business model and your product before you go to market. Second is you only get, you know, one opportunity to make an impression. And today, that impression is very cost effective to be brilliant at making that impression. And that's the shoot, the website, the blog, the app. All of those things, like, you know, your best friend needs to be a graphic designer and the other guy needs to be an IT guy. And once you've got that, with that, you have a company. As long as you have a product and you have a platform to showcase that product, now you can go start your conversations with any strategic partner out there. Don't start making product. Make samples, brand them, package them, and then take the next step to discuss with a Saks or a Bloomingdale's or any retailer that you want to do it with, what do you think, before you incur any more money. Right? Yeah.
Well, something related with the social media tendency. What is the mindset and the trend of the big brands concerning to becoming more accessible and not exclusive anymore?
What is the mindset? I think it's somewhat similar to what, yeah. I think there's just two schools of thought. It's about how that I want to maintain my exclusivity, and it's a conscious strategy that my exclusivity is based upon limited edition bags, shopping experience at retail, not having an online platform. I think that's one way of being exclusive, whereas more forward-thinking brands are looking at exclusivity as partnerships. Balenciaga did the entire wardrobe for Rihanna's last concert. You've got, you've got Marc Jacobs consistently doing a handbag collaboration with a contemporary artist. So you can almost do the opposite. It's who else? I'm trying to think. Again, Karl Lagerfeld did a collaboration with H&M. So the reason for doing that is to reach a broader audience. So the two schools of thought are stay pure and be happy with the demographic you have. And that's a CEO's personal strategy on, this is how I want to build a brand. I don't need top line growth. Or look at a brand that's a true lifestyle brand and understand that, okay, I'm Chanel, I send $10,000 dresses, but guess what? I also sell $250 fragrances. And that makes up a big chunk of my business. And there's a very broad audience out there that's willing to go into a store and pay $250 for the fragrance, but the reason they're paying for it is because they really wanted to buy the $10,000 dress. But they wouldn't even know about the $10,000 dress if I hadn't done the collaboration with H&M, if I hadn't done the movie with Nicole Kidman. And those are my ways of maintaining my integrity, but still reaching a broader audience. So it's how exclusive and creative are your collaborations to reach a broader audience through social media, which doesn't look as deliberate as, oh, I'm trying to reach a broader audience.
What a great comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. This was great, and it was a pleasure being here.